Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I am here today in studio with Michael Kester.
Oh my god, I almost didn't make it today.
For another episode of Double Feature. I thought you might call in sick.
Yeah.
Kind of like a high school student who doesn't have their homework.
Uh-huh.
Because I know today is Coffy and Foxy Brown.
It is, in fact, Coffy and Foxy Brown.
We're going to try an experiment by doing the least experimental thing we have ever done on our show.
Right.
Which is do a pretty easy double feature that kind of makes sense.
And I'm going to do an experiment by just taking this list of reasons I have for why this is a bad double feature,
Sure.
putting them in a trash can, and going ahead and saying that this was a great idea.
I love it. Well, we're trying to answer a little bit of a question here.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we'll come back around to it at the end. Maybe we'll solve it in the two movies. Maybe we're flying from the seat of our pants here. But surely these movies can go back to back.
Oh, yeah.
They are a total, New York slumbox theater double feature.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I would not be surprised at all if people start sending us marquees with Coffy and Foxy Brown.
Double build, standard,
Exactly.
grindhouse style.
Exactly. The question is, we have two different views here. Now, one view is that on Double Feature, our show, we often fuck with the chronology of things.
Sure.
On occasion, we've done the worst thing you can do, which is just feature a sequel and tell people not to worry about the original.
Right.
We've done that. Clearly, we've done Terminator and the Prophecy.
Which was probably the worst thing we could have done. Worse than the other worst
But
thing.
triple worse is the thing we're currently doing, where we're stretching the Rocky movies out over an entire year. So just this once, we're reversing the karma a little bit. We're going to make it right. We're going to pair together these two movies that I won't say are sequels. I don't want to say that because that's factually inaccurate.
Right.
But I will say they were separated at birth. Or at least
kind of.
At birth, Foxy Brown was separated and pushed
a year back.
Yeah. Pushed back to be a different
I'll accept
movie.
that much.
Now, that's one possibility. That's just one side of what could happen here. That's the positive take on things. Mm-hmm. We restore these movies to some kind of glory by creating a time capsule where they're back to back.
Yep.
But there's also a dark side. There is a negative option here. What we might end up doing, rather than having a great show where we reunite two long-lost films, is we might have a bad double feature for the show double feature. That's terrible because the show double feature is our show. We might have a episode here that's just redundant.
Yeah.
Where maybe we don't have 40 minutes because Coffy and Foxy Brown are so similar. Maybe we talk about Coffy, and by the time we get to Foxy Brown, we've basically covered everything. So that's not good for us, and I think that's primarily your fear.
Mm-hmm.
But, the only way to know is to, in the name of goddamn science, perform the experiment, right? This is something, we'll never know if we can do this again in the future until we've tried at least once.
Mm-hmm.
Now, honestly, the outcome here probably won't be one or the other. It'll probably be a little bit of both. We'll probably have a show that's a little short, but it's likely also going to be awesome that we, you type Coffy, Foxy Brown into the internet and our show comes up.
Yeah.
I think those will both happen. You and I, really all we can do at this point, we've committed, we can just bring our A game.
Awesome.
If for some reason you've only seen one of these two films,
you've seen both.
I assume that, let's leave it at that. Spoilers, I don't know. Skip the chapter, just skip to the end, whatever. Coffy's from 1973,
right?
And I don't know if you knew this or not, but Coffy will cream you.
What?
In fact, they call her Coffy, and she will cream you.
Is that a tagline?
That's a tagline from the film. I don't know if you've ever seen the taglines from the film Coffy.
That is the worst tagline I've ever heard in my life.
Well, your opinion on that is about to change. She had a body men would die for, and a lot of them did. Now, what's the worst tagline you've ever heard?
I'm still going with Coffy will cream you.
It doesn't get a lot worse than that.
It sounds like she's going to come on me.
What about...
How is that threatening? I would love Pam Grier to come on me.
Now, when I was talking to somebody right about when we were putting the poster art on double feature, I accidentally discovered that I was a treasure trove of taglines. That somehow from looking at all these stupid fucking covers, I knew the taglines to every film. Coffy has another one, which is "No one sleeps when they mess with coffee."
What?
Right, because you see
energy, coffee,
right?
That one takes the cake.
Jesus,
Coffee Cremia
shit.
is second place too. No one sleeps when they mess with coffee.
She's the goddamn godmother of them all. This is a movie by the...
Is that another one?
That is, actually. You don't know about Godmother? We could do this for 15 to 20 minutes. Just putting that out there right now. This is American International, right? So
Sure.
they were
AIP.
in this race
Yeah.
to basically beat out Cleopatra Jones because they didn't have the rights for that, or they lost the rights or whatever. So they threw $500,000 at this project, and that got them a 35 millimeter golden Panavision instant classic, which was Coffy. And it actually beat out Cleopatra Jones by 1 month to the day to the cinema. So really, if you're asking yourself, why does Coffy exist? It's to give the middle finger to Cleopatra Jones. But it also exists because of Jack Hill.
Yeah, so Jack Hill, this is the reason that I was really willing to acquiesce as to why this was an okay double feature.
You would humor me.
Yeah, it's because I've been trying for a very long time to get a Jack Hill double feature.
Sure.
On the show, because I really like Jack Hill. I have a lot to say about Jack Hill, but I will admit that I still want to do Switchblade Sisters.
Oh yeah,
on the show, because that I feel like is one of the best Jack Hill films because it doesn't fall into a niche.
I would still love to do Cleopatra Jones as well. So maybe we're working on year 5 already.
But Jack Hill is this director from the 70s. He was kind of born under Roger Corman, who we talked about last week with Little Shop of Horrors. And Jack Hill, we've already done on the show when we did Big Birdcage, but he also did another film very similar to that, also with Pam Grier and Sid Haig, called The Big Dollhouse, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more when we get to Foxy Brown. But Jack Hill is just this gritty, quick director. He's really good at, getting stuff done on a budget and in a time frame. I mean, he's under the Corman camp, right? That's kind of how you have to operate when you work under Roger Corman.
Right.
And the other thing he's really well known for is sex and blood.
Right.
But the blood is without fail the bright red, looks like somebody spilled paint on you blood.
It's not as gory. It's more it's more splat.
Yeah, perfect example, first scene in Coffy when she pulls the sawed-off shotgun and points it at the guy's face.
Absolutely.
And explodes his head all over everything in the room.
Yeah, that tiny little shotgun.
Yeah.
When I think Jack Hill, and this is terribly, terribly wrong of me, but I have to think Sid Haig returning with more trademark accents.
Yeah.
Which he may or may not continue through the rest of the film. But Sid Haig, I guess, just as much of a Jack Hill actor as Pam Grier
Even
is.
if it's a small role, he's excited and he's really into the role, and he's always really well placed in the film as the perfect character for Sid Haig to play.
So another key element of Coffy, as we start to look at some of the blaxploitation stuff, it has a theme song.
Yeah.
It has an original kind of soundtrack.
Sure.
Right? These are actual songs, though, with lyrics.
Questionably
songs.
Songs with words sung over them.
Well, I wanted to ask you about, especially, King George, who also gets his own theme. I mean, these are, yourself as a musician, these are some of the best lyrics you've ever heard.
Oh, yeah. No, I can honestly say that there are certain rhymes in here. You are a black pearl in a great, I don't know if it's wide or white world. Yeah. But that I know that's one of the lines. King George, he's bad. Don't take him for a fool or something.
Well,
he's cool. King George, he's cool. King George, don't take him for a fool. These are the stuff real musicians can only dream about someday writing.
These are the things that real musicians can only possibly come up with if they're put on the spot to immediately generate a song in about 5 seconds. Or if they're
in preschool.
You know, at this point, anybody who can get beyond but no one understands him but his woman, that's a winner for me.
Right.
That's an absolute A+.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one key about blaxploitation soundtrack and blaxploitation music is that you have people giving you responses, so you only have to write half the lyrics.
Yeah,
right. I mean, Shaft is a good example, but it's in here too. You say, you know, King George, and then somebody else goes, "Oh yeah, he's cool."
Yeah, right.
Like one person is spitting out, "Here's an idea, King George," and then the other person goes, "Oh yeah."
It's almost the format of our show.
Right.
I mean, we could do a back and forth.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it works.
Musical, if we had a wah-wah pedal,
yep,
we would be totally ready to complete the rest of this episode. So, you know, a couple weeks back, we're talking about The Wrong Man. We're talking about defining it using film noir ideas, because it wasn't a piece of film noir.
Right.
It was kind of the opposite of that. And I got to thinking, you know, as much as I ramble on about film noir, blaxploitation is one of those things where I believe you've seen every movie.
I've seen pretty much every blaxploitation film.
So
that I've ever heard of.
Both Coffy and Foxy Brown definitely get picked out as key pieces of blaxploitation. But I'm wondering if I can sort of get your perspective on how those fall into that. What kind of elements you see a lot, but what stuff, you know, isn't included.
Yeah, so what I actually noticed, because Coffy and Foxy Brown were among probably the first 5 blaxploitation films I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And what I ended up discovering due to expectations delivered mostly through Jack Hill, but through Coffy, specifically Coffy, is that blaxploitation films tend not to be violent or as sexually driven.
Sure.
Especially with female leads. Cleopatra Jones is a really good example.
Sure.
But, you know, when there's a male lead, he's attractive, women are into him, but the sex is never really shown in an exploitative fashion.
Yeah.
It's always a very serious romantic thing. In Coffy, sex is a tool. Sex is totally being exploited. Pam Grier is the fucking hottest woman on the planet. So it's no question that Jack Hill is going to have her be naked and show plenty of blood.
Right.
But that's not characteristic of blaxploitation. What's characteristic is corruption in the black community, usually somebody trying to manipulate the black community through keeping them oppressed using drugs.
Sure.
And usually some corrupt political scheme.
We see a little bit of that stuff in here.
Well, in Coffy, there's the whole congressman and how he's going to rise to the top, but he's playing both sides. He's lying to the black community for votes and then lying to the white community. It's just, a lot of it is power play, and then one person steps up and is the real voice of the black community.
Sure, right.
And, or in some cases, 3 people. But it's always just this kind of mix of black people being oppressed and then black people getting themselves out of the situation. And usually, there in a lot of cases, there are no white people.
Right.
Whatsoever that play any key role in the film. And I feel like Coffy is just, I mean, it's a really exemplary film as blaxploitation, as long as you accept that there's not going to be as much blood or sex in anything else you watch. Also, probably fewer lesbians.
There are a lot of lesbians. They get, you know, I love that they're in that brothel and one woman has to do the phones.
Yeah.
Because she's the operator and she just pretends to be all the other girls. But, you know, in hitting a lot of the staples of the genre, these 2 films managed to be pretty similar, as we'll talk about a little bit more in Foxy Brown. I think we covered the genre pretty well when we did things like Shaft,
Sure.
or Black Dynamite.
Black Dynamite's really good.
But we definitely had male leads in both of those, and we didn't have the violence that we had. I mean, this is the end of your motherfucking life, you
Right.
dope pusher. You know, the head explosion is not something you would expect to see in Shaft.
Getting dragged behind a fucking car.
Oh my God, tell me about it. That whole scene, I mean, lynched and dragged behind that car. The drag behind the car, we saw it in Sleepaway Camp. We saw it in Argento's Opera.
Sure.
But the fact that there's this sort of racial component to it makes it so much more, not only brutal, but honestly just kind of disturbing. It seems more wrong.
Yeah, it seems really dark, and I feel like a lot of what Coffy tries to do is have this Latino character and this Latino syndicate that plays in so that it feels less like the white man lynching a black man.
Sure.
So that they have at least a thin layer of protection from white supremacy.
Right.
And instead, in that scene, I believe Sid Haig still has the accent.
Yeah.
And so they can get away with it just being a Latino thing versus the black community. And it stops becoming a hate crime, even though it's still totally a hate crime.
Well, because there's definitely a line you could cross there where we go from fun sort of revenge.
Right. When it goes from exploitation violence to a racist statement.
Right. Yeah, which is a line they're always walking anyways. Something like a bunch of white people going out and lynching, men in the street would be, I think, far over that line.
I agree. Yes.
But exploitation, all about pushing the line.
Yep.
I would not be surprised to find that somewhere in the blaxploitation world.
Sure.
So you do get that violence. You get the kaboom police car fire thing. The thing that's made so much more violent by the screaming coming from the inside. But the thing that stands out the most to me, and the reason Coffy and Foxy Brown are really two of my favorites, in not just the specific subgenre, but exploitation in general, are the really heavy sort of women's power kind of themes.
Well, I mean, there are moments where you see Coffy with the shotgun.
Sure.
And it is just one of the most empowering looking moments.
Right.
Perfect example, when she runs over the one-eyed man.
Sure.
Gets out of the car in the living room and has the shotgun at hip fire range and just starts blowing people away. That is a moment of pure control.
Yeah. Well, that shotgun that's become the characteristic, you hold that thing and you are a badass.
Right, for sure.
And to see her in the beginning of the movie and in the end of the movie, with that kind of firepower behind her, I mean, no one's going to fuck with her at that point.
Unless they want to get creamed.
She, she considers herself a liberated woman.
Sure.
They talk about that a lot. She has this great honorable day job. She works in medicine. She's a nurse.
Yeah, I mean, Coffy's a completely human person. She's just a woman who's been put in a situation, and instead of being a coward or being,
being oppressed like everyone else.
Yeah, and instead of looking for help from other people, she decides that she's going to have to solve the problem herself. And that's something that I feel like really differs between Coffy and Foxy Brown, is that Coffy is just a woman who decides to take up her own defense.
Whereas Foxy Brown is a super soldier.
Is a super spy.
Yeah, but Coffy does get her fair share of fighting. It's not that she's not tough.
Not at all.
She is keeping people off the junk. She is, she has that scene where she has, I think it's Priscilla, right?
Yeah.
Where she's pinned down. The one that's shot on the weirdest fucking angle.
It's so cool.
Yeah, the composition of that frame is really great, and she's got the bottle. The all chick fights, where how do you defeat people in those fights?
I believe you have to rip their shirt off.
Yeah, rip the top open and they're gone. It's kind of they make fun of that a lot when there's a bunch of people versus one individual, and you punch them back and they flail around for 5 minutes before coming forward. I think we talked about this in Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
But here you tear open a shirt and they're down. That's it. I mean, I guess they have to cover themselves, humility, something.
There you go.
The other part of this character, and something Pam Grier came up with, and I think is maybe, I'm at least going to challenge the internet and say that this is the first time this has happened.
All right.
Coffy pulls things out of her afro.
And put stuff in.
And puts things into her afro. Or it's a lot less afro in this movie and more.
It's
just
an afro once and a kind of a bouffant hairdo the other
bouffant
time.
hairdo, excellent. So she's concealing things inside her hair.
Right.
I'm wondering if this is where this came from or if this has ever been done before. doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. Here and now, Foxy Brown.
Okay, so before we get into Foxy Brown the film, I have a little bit more to say about Jack Hill, and I feel like this is going to clear up a lot of what people may have furrowed their brow at.
Sure.
When watching these two films, especially if you watch them back to back like we did.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Hill, if you go on his fucking Wikipedia page, if you know anything about Jack Hill,
Sure.
he is an exploitation director.
Right.
That is his MO, that is his job, that's where his money came from, that is his identity in film in the 70s. So we talked about The Big Birdcage on the show when we did it back with Cannibal Holocaust.
Right.
And as I mentioned during Coffee, there's another film he did called The Big Dollhouse, also starring Pam Grier and Sid Haig, women in prison movie.
Right.
Came first, and essentially he goes, or he doesn't, but the producer goes, that did well, could you do that again?
Sure.
And Jack Hill says, absolutely, I can do that again. And I'll tell you what, I'll do one better. And he exploits his own film to make more money.
Right.
Imagine, so if you write a great book and it's called, I don't know, I don't give a shit. Doesn't matter. Fuck this analogy.
I think people get where you're going with this.
Yeah. So basically what happens with Foxy Brown is Coffee does well. People really love Coffee. And so Jack Hill basically gets asked to do Coffee again. Not a sequel.
Right.
Not a remake, but a film
Not a
that
Japanese one.
Right. Not a Japanese one. But a film that will exploit the success of his previous film.
Sure.
And that's where Foxy Brown comes from and why it's so similar. Because if it's not broke, don't fucking fix it.
Yeah, this is hoping to lure in maybe some of the audience that saw Coffee and maybe some of the audience who didn't see Coffee.
Right.
Whereas before, they were concentrating on one-upping Cleopatra Jones, successful. Also, by the way, they took $500,000 and made a movie that banked $2 million.
There you go.
So I think you call that a success. And you know what? Foxy Brown was successful too. But here they are 9 months later, this movie comes out. They have the same studio giving Jack Hill another $500,000. He actually started doing this as a sequel to Coffee before the studio decided, you know what? We'll just do it as a different movie and it'll make more money. And the working title, I think, was Burn, Coffee, Burn, which, you know, I love me some taglines. So a title like Burn, Coffee, Burn, amazing. But eventually they decide they don't want a sequel. That's a smart move because it opens up a whole new line of catchphrases.
Oh.
Well, now the character has a different name that you can rhyme with.
Which are such as?
I don't mess around with Foxy Brown.
Is that one of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there was one, a chick with drive who don't take no jive was how they described Foxy Brown.
Okay.
There's a really fucking bizarre one. I remember it as being...
There's a bizarre one?
It's like a paragraph.
Okay.
She's brown sugar and spice, but if you don't treat her nice... Put you on ice was the end of it. She'll put you on... Yeah, that's what it was. I'm really impressed with myself that I was able to do that. Brown sugar and spice, if you don't treat her nice, she'll put you on ice.
That is awful.
That's the tagline. I believe that's an entire poster for Foxy Brown.
Wow.
And this is Jack Hill's last movie with Pam Grier. This is the fourth one he's done. And this would be the last one. And it's Pam Grier in a lot different way than we see in Coffee.
Sure.
You can see where that kind of came from the same character.
Oh, yeah.
But this is, I mean,
there's more confidence, more definition.
Super spy. There's more super spy.
Yeah, I mean, you're exploiting the
that.
parts of Coffee that people liked, which was when she was a badass with a shotgun.
Right.
And now you put her in a bunch of outfits. A bunch of outfits. Let me reiterate. A bunch of fucking outfits.
Well, so this reminds me of sort of the James Bond thing. Not just because it's a spy. I mean, definitely
it reminds
that
me
too.
of Bedazzled, but continue.
Well, you know what? You're hung up on this fashion thing. It reminds me of Bond in that, you know, they get a new Bond. The first one comes out and everyone sees it because it's the first one. And the second one has to amp up what the first one was.
Right.
And you see this basically happen every single time there's a new Bond. And they just keep amping it up. It gets bigger and bigger until it's so big it's fucking ridiculous. And then they get a new Bond.
Okay. I've really only seen 3 James Bond movies.
I wish I could unsee. I'm going to go out on a limb and say all James Bond movies. I wish I could unsee all James Bond movies. Can we get back to feminism? Please. I have to clean myself of this James Bond awfulness. So Foxy Brown becomes the more stylish counterpart. She does have a new outfit in every scene.
Except the last one where she continues the outfit from the previous scene.
Probably for the only time in the entire... I mean, okay, we've talked about this before. You and I don't drink.
Nope.
Not fans of drinking. Don't even really like being around drunk people.
Fact.
But that's your thing. Totally into freedom. Go ahead and get drunk. Fine.
Are you going to drinking game?
Drinking game. Every time Foxy Brown puts on a new outfit, take a shot. You will not get through the first act of the film.
How about every time Catherine Loder has a bigger necklace on than she did in the previous scene, also take a shot?
It reminds me of the Spirit and Samuel L. Jackson and the bigger guns.
The guns.
Right. So we're also doing something different with the music too. Aside from getting these lyrical songs with the terrible, terrible lyrics that are about, each person, which I mean, terrible, but wonderful.
Wonderfully enjoyable.
So glad those songs exist.
Characteresque of the film.
We sound so sarcastic, but seriously.
Definitely serious.
So glad those songs are in the movie. I'm going to run off to iTunes and purchase them now. I might actually find a link and put them in the show notes if I can find the soundtracks for both of these movies. The soundtrack for this movie is all Willie Hutch stuff, who admittedly, I don't know a lot about Motown, right? He's a big, big, big Motown guy. And it's just something I've never really... I find it like the Beatles. It's something I know I want to go learn about, but there's too much and I don't have time and I'm just not there yet. But it's all of that, very, very signature fast percussion kind of wah-wah stuff. All the music in Foxy Brown, I mean.
Right.
The bongos and I don't know if it's a heavy hi-hat or a shaker.
It's a hi-hat or a shaker or both simultaneously.
Sure. It kind of sounds like a little open and close on the hi-hat. But you know what I mean. The percussion is all very fast. And then the wah just can't be bothered. It's just taking its time. It's just doing its own thing. It's following its own path.
Yeah.
The fucking wah, cool as a motherfucker.
Shut your mouth.
And the album was, in fact, released on Motown as well.
Right.
So the movie might even be considered more typical of some of the blaxploitation elements, especially when the movie really starts speaking its mind. Link has that bit of dialogue.
Link being Black Perry Farrell. I will never let that go.
That's absolutely
Link is Black
fine.
Perry Farrell.
I'm not a big movie quotation person, probably because, as you mentioned on an earlier episode, I usually see movies once or twice, the more recent stuff we're doing. Just not having time like I did in the first couple of years where I've seen everything 1,000 goddamn times.
Also, Napoleon Dynamite is the other reason that I don't like quoting films.
Well, Napoleon Dynamite is not a film, nor is it a movie, by the way, so we don't even have to worry about that. Let's go back to that Fargo checklist. You want to talk about old episodes. So Link talks about how he can't sing, he can't dance, he can't preach, he's too small to play football, and too ugly to be the mayor.
I love that.
If that's not the film's opinion of how the black community is oppressed...
Yeah, or at least portrayed in film, right?
Well, that could be it, too. It could be commentary by this point. I mean, we're talking 74, so there's definitely still ground to be kind of paved here.
Right, but blaxploitation has certainly been around.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it has. And so that's his excuse. That's his excuse for dealing drugs or having no job or both.
Being a deadbeat and having nowhere to put all of his motivation.
But this is also the movie that, as I know you love, points out that vigilante justice is as American as apple fucking pie.
Yeah. I love it and hate it simultaneously.
Right, because it's so not, but also film. You get back to film once again.
Because it's fucking Foxy Brown.
Yeah, right.
It's true in Foxy Brown, but not in real life.
Yeah, I mean these are right around the Death Wish years.
Yeah,
I mean before that.
Actually,
stuff,
Death Wish came out in 74, I believe.
Yeah, so the movie kind of sensed vigilante justice. Here it comes. Before all of those movies kicked off.
But back to the blaxploitation thing for a second.
Absolutely.
And we talked about it in Coffy, how Jack Hill, lots of tits, lots of sex, lots of blood.
Right.
Foxy Brown, not so much.
Well, especially of the lead character.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It suddenly becomes a game to see if you can catch Pam Grier naked.
Right.
In the previous movie, naked in half the scenes.
Sure.
I think the problem is too many fucking outfits.
Yeah,
I think there's a different outfit in every sequence.
That
so
covers up all of her private parts.
Naked, not an outfit.
Right.
And she's naked once after she's raped or before she's raped or...
I believe her tit falls out while she's tonguing a razor blade.
Oh, God. Hold on. Can we pause for a second? Tonguing a razor blade is... it's on par with these horror movie splat pack moments where people's nails fall off.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just... I'm uncomfortable even talking about it. And like biting it in her teeth. What is she doing? Don't tongue the razor blade. But of course, being the badass super spy, you know, she has to tongue the razor blade.
Right.
That's how she gets out of this sort of MacGyver Bond situation.
But there's almost no sex in this film. There's almost no consensual sex.
Sure.
In this film, which is a lot more in line with blaxploitation, not so much in line with Jack Hill, but if you look at it like he's just exploiting Coffy, I don't need to put sex in it. People saw sex in Coffy. They expect it here. They're already at the fucking movie theater.
Yeah, right.
I don't need to show them. If Pam is going to ask for more money,
sure,
I'm not going to pay her.
Well, because Coffy almost becomes the trailer for Foxy Brown at that point. If you want to get an idea of what Foxy Brown might include, the people who saw that and liked it are going to it. The people who had no interest in it, they're attached to Super Spy.
Right. And by then, Pam Grier has finally broken into American cinema. And I'm guessing adds a couple zeros to her tit check.
It could definitely be the case. So where in Coffy, she was sort of the first of her kind, picking up the shotgun and being a badass. She is now really at the height of, you know, this archetype that she helped create.
Right.
You know, we didn't have badass female superstar really until, you know, the days of Foxy Brown.
Right.
That's where that really became part of being an American icon, part of what films would pick up on and deliver over and over beyond that.
Right.
You know, you had these female counterparts who could also have some degree of badass to them.
Sure.
And certainly they existed in cinema before Coffy.
Yeah.
But at the point of Foxy Brown, I think Pam Grier was recognized as the one.
Sure.
She was the female empowerment superstar icon. She could easily carry the entire film herself. She was the thing that brought people to the film. Oh my God, another one of these movies where Pam Grier is being a female superstar, karate, ninja, gun-toting awesome. And so that's a moment that makes this transcend far beyond a genre piece.
Yeah.
In fact, it might elevate the entire genre just because of what it's doing.
No, I fully agree.
Now everybody has to turn towards blaxploitation and take notice because of what this genre has done.
Sure.
Maybe out of necessity, maybe out of creativity, maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe by complete mistake.
It's found a bit of a niche that other movies can all start to steal from.
Yep.
You know, heroin, a term I don't even like using because it just sounds like I'm saying heroin.
Right.
That's the thing. It used to be for drugs. And now it is Pam Grier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now there is female hero star huge. And that's something that everybody kind of needed to stop and take notice of. And I mean, Hollywood surely did. You know, the bigger studios later ran with this idea exponentially.
Absolutely.
And now you see everybody reference back to Foxy Brown. You see that kind of Austin Powers thing. You see, I mean, you know, Quentin Tarantino's Jackie Brown, a reference to Foxy Brown. Harry Brown, probably not a reference to Foxy Brown.
You
but
never really know.
Let's go ahead and pretend it is. I mean, he's kicking ass.
That's true.
Everybody was like, oh, Harry Brown, Death Wish. I'm going to go Harry Brown, Foxy Brown.
Harry Brown will put you on ice. There's one other name that I want to talk about because she was in The Big Dollhouse, which is the one we didn't cover.
Right.
But Catherine Loder.
Oh, yeah.
Who plays Catherine Wall.
Miss Catherine, please.
Yes, Miss Catherine. She's always a villain. She's always maniacal. And she's always equal parts really creepy and kind of hot.
Yeah.
The thing about her is she's so strong that she can't be the female to a male's evil character. If the villain of the film is a male, Catherine Loder cannot play the female second in command, I guess.
Yeah,
she has to be the queen. She has to be the boss, the mother. She is this giant force that just, I have no problem believing she just manipulates people and has total control, and you do not fucking question her, but maybe you send her a cock in a jar?
Yeah, at least on paper, this is creating a worthy adversary to Foxy Brown.
If ever there was one, I feel like Catherine Loder, especially Catherine Wall, the character, makes a whole lot of sense to be the antithesis to Foxy Brown.
Yeah, and you know, when you look at how she interacts with all those male counterparts, all of her subordinates are men. They are her fucking slaves. I mean, she is clearly the boss in this situation, and you only ever see her down once, and it's at the end, you know, at the hands of our hero.
Sure.
Right? That's the only, it's basically saying there are, you know, two people who reign supreme over everyone in the film, Miss Catherine and Foxy Brown, and Foxy Brown happens to be a tiny bit above Miss Catherine.
Right, well, Foxy Brown is the type of person who will fly a plane through somebody and chop them into tiny little pieces. Thank you, Jack Hill, for bringing your violence back at the end of Foxy Brown.
Right, save it all up. Well, that and the snip and toss.
Yeah, that's
between
true.
The two of
mean,
those.
Foxy Brown will go the extra mile to put a cock in a jar.
Is that a snip and toss or a snip and store?
I think it's a snip and store.
Yeah, and she really only loses because she brings a knife to a gunfight. I mean,
literally,
that's the
literally
thing, right?
that.
Well, she doesn't expect Foxy to take a gun out of her afro. Again,
there it is.
She had not seen Coffy. That is really her biggest failing.
Let that be a lesson to all of you who chaptered to Foxy Brown over Coffy.
What do you feel like our conclusion is? We're gonna spoiler-free wrap up this one because I'm a little curious. How well do these work? Now, we've established that we have a fear on double feature of being too redundant, and we have two movies that are very similar.
Yep.
But we wanted to do them because they kind of go together.
And because Jack Hill.
So we know they kind of go together, and we know Jack Hill.
Do. Yeah.
My big question, the lingering question, I guess, is how well do they work in the continuity? I mean, if you were to say, pretend, style aside, that Coffy comes first and Foxy Brown is the follow-up to Coffy.
Sure.
Do you think those really work as a sort of series?
I think it almost works. I feel like there's a few key differences and pieces of dialogue that would have to be changed. It's really easy to accept that her boyfriend in the beginning is just the cop from Coffy.
Right.
He ends up in the hospital, that whole thing. So I guess it would work. I think I can see where it was written originally as a sequel, but I feel like by the end there's so much repetition with what worked in Coffy that it almost can't be a sequel. It's more of a one-up-quel.
Yeah, that was my biggest surprise finally doing these back-to-back, because that was selfish for me too. I've seen Coffy quite a bit. I've seen Foxy Brown a fucking ton. But I've never actually watched them back to back to see how they kind of line up. It's always been, 6 months apart or something. Right. And the thing that honestly I think separates them enough to make that impossible is really the style.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I think you can tell yourself you're going to ignore. I mean, one doesn't quite feel like the other.
Yeah.
It's redundant plot-wise. And then the style is so fucking different that you're telling yourself Coffy doesn't wear these outfits.
Right. Well, it's gritty and glamorous. I mean, that is the difference.
A bit too much glamour then to put the two together.
Right.
But still a fine double feature. We have a website, doublefeatureshow.com, where you can find more fine double features. We also have what's the thing? Mail?
Oh,
email?
it's we have an email address, which is doublefeatureshow@gmail.com.
Definitely let us know what you think of Coffy and Foxy Brown back to back. What you noticed because these two movies went together.
Which is your preferred facial hair situation for Sid Haig?
Sure, definitely about the Sid Haig. Also, kind of curious if people mind the simple double features. Ultimately, it will come down to, do we mind these simple double features?
The answer is yes. But
a couple times a year, if the movies just kind of make sense.
Agreed.
Does it hurt to move away from that? And feedback, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com.
Awesome.
But I think it's time to go back to theme territory for a
Great.
long time. And the theme next week is the past, catching up with people. So we have two movies we're doing.
Okay. Is that the Out of the Past History of Violence thing?
Wow, that was good. You are on top of this. It is,
Okay.
in fact, Out of the Past, which, of course, is a movie about something coming out of the past.
Okay. Time
And,
travel.
and
History
of Violence,
which is about, it's a documentary about war through the ages.
not true at all. It's a David Cronenberg movie. Have you seen A History of Violence yet?
I
I remember you saying that was one of the Cronenberg you
have
had
not seen A History of Violence.
Ooh, exciting. New movies for Michael.
New movies for Michael double feature next week. Watch more fucking film. You want to say more? Say more.
Bye.
And
All right.
going ahead and saying that this was a great idea.
I love it. Well, we're trying to answer a little bit of a question here. And
Mhm.
maybe we'll come back around to it at the end. Maybe we'll solve it in the two movies. Maybe we're flying from the seat of our pants here. But surely these movies can go back to back.
Oh, yeah.
They are a total, New York slumbox theater double feature,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would not be surprised at all if people start sending us marquees with
Sure.
Coffy and Foxy
Double
Brown.
build, standard,
Exactly.
grindhouse style.
Exactly. The question is, we have two different views here. Now, one view is that on Double Feature, our show,
Mm-hmm.
we often fuck with the chronology of things.
Sure.
On occasion, we've done the worst thing you can do, which is just feature a sequel and tell people not to worry about the original.
Right.
We've done that. Clearly, we've done Terminator and the Prophecy.
Which was probably the worst thing we could have done. Worse
Yeah.
than the other worst
But
thing.
triple worse is the thing we're currently doing,
Right.
where we're stretching the Rocky movies out over an entire year. So just this once, we're reversing the karma a little bit. We're going to make it right. We're going to pair together these two movies that I won't say are sequels. I don't
They're
want to say
not.
that because that's factually inaccurate.
Right.
But I will say they were separated at birth, or at least
Well, kind of.
at birth, Foxy Brown was separated and pushed
A year
to-
back.
Yeah, pushed back to be a different
I'll accept
movie.
that much.
Now, that's one possibility. That's just one side of what could happen here. That's the positive take on things.
Mhm.
We restore these movies to some kind of glory by creating a time capsule where they're back to back.
Yep.
But there's also a dark side. There is a negative option here. What we might end up doing, rather than having a great show where we reunite two long-lost films, is we might have a bad double feature for the show double feature. That's terrible because the show double feature is our...
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and I am here today in studio with Michael Kester
Oh my god, I almost didn't make it today.
for another episode of Double Feature. I thought you might call in sick,
Yeah.
kind of like a high school student who doesn't have their homework.
Uh-huh.
Because I know today is Coffy and Foxy Brown.
It is, in fact, Coffy and Foxy Brown.
We're going to try and experiment by doing the least experimental thing we have ever done on
Right.
our show,
Right.
which is do a pretty easy double feature that kind of makes sense.
And I'm going to do an experiment by just taking this list of reasons I have for why this is a bad double feature,
Sure.
putting them in a trash.
Our show. We might have a episode here that's just redundant,
Yeah.
where maybe we don't have 40 minutes because Coffy and Foxy Brown are so similar. Maybe we talk about Coffy, and by the time we get to Foxy Brown, we've basically covered everything. So that's not good for us, and I think that's primarily your fear.
Mhm.
But, I mean, the only way to know is to, in the name of goddamn science, perform the experiment, right? This is something, I mean, we'll never know if we can do this again in the future until we've tried at least once.
Mhm.
Now, honestly, the outcome here probably won't be one or the other. It'll probably be a little bit of both. We'll probably have a show that's a little short, but it's likely also going to be awesome that we, you type Coffy, Foxy Brown into the internet and our show comes up.
Yeah.
I think those will both happen. You and I, really all we can do at this point, we've committed, we can just bring our A game.
Awesome.
If for some reason you've only seen one of these two films,
You've seen both.
I assume that, yeah, well, yeah, let's leave it at that. Spoilers, I don't know. Skip the chapter, just skip to the end, whatever. Coffee's from 1973.
Right.
And I don't know if you knew this or not, but Coffee will cream you.
What?
In fact, they call her Coffee, and she will cream you.
Is that a tagline?
That's a tagline from the film. I don't know if you've ever seen the taglines from the film Coffee.
That is the worst tagline I've ever heard in my life.
Well, your opinion on that is about to change. She had a body men would die for, and a lot of them did. Now, what's the worst tagline you've ever heard?
I'm still going with Coffee will cream you.
It doesn't get a lot worse.
It sounds like she's going to come on me.
What about?
How is that threatening? I would love Pam Grier to come on me.
Now, when I was talking to somebody right about when we were putting the poster art on Double Feature, I accidentally discovered that I was a treasure trove of taglines. That somehow from looking at all these stupid fucking covers, I knew the tagline.